To that story we brought you from Sharm el-Sheikh now, climate change is the number one priority, as nearly 200 countries have gathered, the leaders thereof and other players have gathered at the climate change conference in Egypt. Tackling the climate crisis has become a global mission as nations have come together to take action towards achieving the world's collective climate goals as agreed under the Paris Agreement and the Convention. eNCA senior reporter Siphamandla Goge is on the ground in Sharm el-Sheikh and has an update for us. So, Siphamandla, these conferences tend to focus on global emissions reductions and curbing the rise in global temperatures. But it seems, from what I've been reading, this year has a particular theme: the Global South wanting more accountability from the global north for undertakings made, but also for the impact of climate change.
Absolutely, simply because it's the developed world that has made commitments that they've been unable to fulfill. That centers around the issue of climate finance, and a number of talks over the years have revolved around how the developed world has made those commitments, particularly if we drill down after the Paris Agreement. The most talked about landmark outcome there was the issue of the developed world pledging that they will, moving forward, every year contribute about $100 billion to help the developing world to fight the impact of climate change, which is severe and very visible. And that commitment has not been fulfilled. There is very little evidence to prove and suggest that the developed world has honored that commitment, and they keep on talking about new ways and models of funding, new commitments, but they have not honored the previous ones. So coming to this COP27 climate change conference, which is underway in Egypt, most people, particularly from the developing world, would want to see those commitments honored. The issue of accountability is one of the priority areas when it comes to developing nations, climate finance, and there is another very important talking point here, which is about loss and damage. What do we mean by that? The developing countries are saying, look, we have not been responsible for polluting the environment, damaging the environment. We are the least when it comes to emissions, but the powerful nations who've been polluting the environment, causing this climate change and the impact of climate change, are the ones who have benefited. They've been able to grow their economies, but they are not honoring their financial commitments. We have lost our livestock, we have lost our land, we have lost our livelihood, and we live with the impact of climate change every day. So we need to be compensated for that loss and damage by the developed world. So that, for the first time, has been put on the agenda at COP, which is interesting, but many people are not optimistic that it will yield positive results here. Let me tell you that young people from South Africa form part of a delegation, and the most interesting thing about the South African delegation attending COP27 is that it comprises of about 60% women and young people. That is very important and positive, simply because women and young people bear the brunt of climate change impact, and we are joined by one of them now, Kopano. Kopano, thank you very much for your time. As a young person, what does being here mean for you? But what are the priority issues that you would like to see world leaders and negotiators focusing on to avert the catastrophic impact of climate change?
Thank you so much, Siphamandla. I am here, I think, as a youth delegate to help get rid of the idea of tokenism, to just tick the box to say that we have young people at the table, and I'm here to just, offer a way for young people to know that the door is open, the table is there and the negotiations are there. We are more than just, we offer more in in the spaces, simply because we have new ideas, new solutions that we can bring to the table, and our voices. And I come from a country, South Africa, and we have more than 30% of the youth in the country, and that basically means that. So sorry.
It's okay, it's fine. Take your time. We can do it with your own language from back home. If and when you get stuck, let's go back to Mzansi, my sister. It's okay. But as a young person, I'm sure where you come from, your province, the Northwest, Limpopo, KwaZulu-Natal, the Free State, the Northwest, have seen the impact of climate change. Whether I talk about severe droughts, crippling and flooding, we have seen all of that. And young people and women bear the brunt, and scientists say all of that is associated with the impact of climate change.
Of course, and I think so. I also just want to drift a bit and say that I was part of the SAYCAP, and that basically means that we had encompassed experiences of young people on the floor, right? And to get the idea of how climate change affects young people as a nation, and that also. It's very difficult to be in policy spaces and have world leaders not understand what we go through as young people on the ground level. And that document is basically a living, breathing document that helps in policy making, or will help in the process of policies, to know that what we want as young people, to know that it's not just about
that's Tswana or that's Sotho. What would you like to say?
I would like to see accountability, being taken by world leaders. The issue of finance, the issue of capacity building and training young people, exactly, and which is one of the things that we focus on ACE, which is part of what I've been following in the negotiations, which is Action for Climate Empowerment, and that's basically just providing training, providing awareness, climate education, and also incorporation of international, the international space and countries, to be able to say that in policies, young people should be included in these spaces, to know that we can move forward in the implementation of climate action.
Thank you very much for your time, Kopano Morago. She's one of the delegation. She forms part of the South African delegation. A number of young people from South Africa are here. Let me tell you that these talks are likely going to pick up and gain momentum early next week. This weekend the talks are on recess. Next week they are going to resume and get underway. That's when negotiators will get down to the business of trying to get a deal that by the time this COP27 ends here in Egypt, at least the text that will be coming out, the final draft, will have more positive news, because these talks have been going on for decades, but very little has been achieved, and there are hopes that at least this African COP will be able to produce something positive moving forward. It will not achieve all the things that have been set out, but at least there has to be something positive. Will that happen? It all depends on all the parties that are negotiating here. But let me tell you that when it comes to climate change and environmental issues, most of the time they get drowned by interests of various countries and parties, particularly big developed nations. They are the ones who've been accused of being stumbling blocks when it comes to achieving the real impact and registering positive gains in fighting climate change.
I envy you, Siphamandla Goge. Nothing as gratifying as being in those spaces and just getting a sense of the international diplomacy of trying to hammer together some kind of a deal before the time is up at conferences like those. eNCA's Siphamandla Goge out in Sharm el-Sheikh with that update there on the COP27 Conference of the Parties to the UN Convention on Climate Change. I think it dates back as far as 1992, if I'm not mistaken, and they've had 27 of these meetings. And Siphamandla on the ground to give you updates on that.